Hi everyone, I'm John C. Morley, the host of the J Moore Tech Talk Show and Inspirations for Your Life. Well, hey guys, good evening, and thanks for tuning in to the J Moore Tech Talk Show. This is Friday, which means it's time for another J Moore Tech Talk Show. It's March 20th, 2026. This is Series 5, which means we've passed our fourth year of being on the air, and we're almost on the air. 4 years and 3 months, another week or so. All right, guys, so let's get right into the show, shall we? But before we do that, I want to thank you for joining me. If this is your very first time, welcome and thank you. If you're coming back, of course, welcome back. And thank you for coming back. I always appreciate people that enjoy the quality content of my show. A little bit of new news. If you guys didn't know, the book that I'm writing, my motivational book, is finished. It's going through final edits right now, and it will be dedicated to my parents around the 17th or 18th of April. And yes, then it will be available for public ordering the day or so after. And then on May 1st, it will be shipping, as well as it will be on Audible and things like that. All right, guys. So if you're thirsty, I actually got my RO water here. Nice and cool and delicious. And if you're hungry, if you're thirsty, feel free to get something, whether it's hot, whether it's cold, whether it's nutritious, whether it's junk food, whatever it is, that's totally up to you. Could be a piece of fruit, could be a candy bar, anything you would like. All right. So if you have not been here before, or if you've been here before, don't forget to check out believemeachieve.com. For those of you watching the show, you can see my great hat with my LEDs on it. If you're not watching the show, it's just a black hat. Has colorful letters going across to let people know about believemeachieve.com. I invite you to check that out after the show is over. Without any further ado, guys, let's get right into the show. All right. So welcome, everyone, to the J Moore Tech Talk Show. Who am I? Great question. I'm John C. Morley, serial entrepreneur, engineer, marketing specialist, video producer, podcast host, coach, keynote speaker, graduate student, and a passionate lifelong learner. And pretty soon, ladies and gentlemen, I will be a published author, and I'm very excited for that moment. Welcome, everyone, to, once again, the J Moore Tech Talk Show, where I break down the most impactful cutting-edge tech stories from around the globe. And this week, I'm diving into 14 breakthrough tech moments that are, well, starting to mold and shape our industries, lives, and the future of innovation as we know it. From autonomous cars to AI ethics, from crypto to robotics, every development challenges how we live, work, and interact. So, guys, buckle up and let's explore the trends you need to know to stay ahead. Are you ready? I know I am. All right, guys, number one. Yes, number one is a very, very interesting one. We're talking about the self-driving cars safety debate. So U.S. regulators are debating robotaxi safety in real time, guys. Companies like Waymo already deliver hundreds of thousands of rides weekly. Future laws may redefine autonomous driving as we know it today. And so maybe not a big deal for all of us, but it is a big deal for the people that are trying to make money off of that concept, right? So I think that's something that a lot of people are still kind of a little bit shy about. They don't know really what's going to happen or why things are going to happen a certain way. But all we know right now is that they're supposedly doing this for our greater good. So again, I don't know, what's happening exactly, but definitely some very, very big challenges. And ladies and gentlemen, the Amazon drone unit quits. Yes, the industry group. This is, how can I say, this is very amazing, guys. And it's something that a lot of people, I don't think, really understand. And so, drone units, quitting industry group, Amazon Prime Air quitting the Commercial Drone Alliance over safety rules. Amazon supports mandatory collision support. I don't know if you guys know that or not, but it supports that. And they call it mandatory collision avoidance systems for drones. And the group opposes the requirement. So the fight shows a growing conundrum between this question: how do drones safely share airspace with planes? Well, they do it in a very interesting way right now. It's kind of like hope we don't hit anybody. That's kind of the way it goes right now. And cyber attack, yes, hits medical device makers. Stryker, in fact, says a cyber attack disrupted orders, manufacturing, and shipping after hackers breached its Microsoft systems. The company says patient care systems and connected medical devices were not affected. Investigators are still determining the full impact. And I think that's an important thing for everyone to realize because, just because these people are big in their company name, we have to realize the real truth, right? The thing is, a lot of people don't want to say anything. And the reason is because, well, it could affect their job. It could affect whether they even have a job, to be, quite blunt. And so people are shying away from, well, what a lot of people are trying to get questions and answers about. So, that's the truth, guys. That's really what's happening right now as we speak. And I think a lot of people don't really understand that concept. They don't understand, what it means or why it means this, but all they know is they're not happy with the way things are right now. And so if we think about that for, I don't know, just a moment or so, I think what we're going to conclude is that there are definitely some changes around the world. And these changes, guys, are changes that are going to impact people from day one right around the world, because it's impacting not just people's financial life, but it's also impacting the way they live. And that's a big challenge, where information is derived from, what's considered a standard, what's truth, what's not truth. And I think those are big concerns for everybody, not just one particular person or not just a particular company, to be, quite honest about it. But that is what's happening. And ladies and gentlemen, the United Kingdom social media crackdown. The UK demands stronger age checks, protecting kids versus enforcing reality. Yeah, that's a very interesting one. So the UK presses social media to block kids, and UK regulators are demanding stronger age checks from Meta, TikTok, Snap, YouTube, and a lot of others. Officials say platforms are failing to keep children off services meant for older, more mature adult users. Companies must now show how they will improve protections under the Online Safety Act. And guys, you know what they must do? They must prove to these federal agencies that these people are not using adult services. So again, it's becoming a big liability for these companies, because content that was just, let's say, in the wrong hands has now become more of an endangerment to them. So that's a serious problem that I think a lot of people don't want to face. But I'm going to tell you guys, it is absolutely the truth. All right. It is the truth. And ladies and gentlemen, AI is now battling over medical bills. If you were watching my reels, I don't know if you guys know this, but every week I have 14 reels. And those 14 reels, there's 2 every day, usually a morning and an evening. And every week on Friday, I take those reels and I basically rip them apart, and I give you even more detail than just that summary. In the reel on this one, AI battling over medical bills, I used an example of 2 forks where they're fighting, the insurance and the medical. And so hospitals and insurers are deploying AI to fight over healthcare payments. Insurers like United Health Group say AI helps detect unnecessary treatments, while hospitals use AI to code procedures for higher reimbursement. Experts warn the system is turning into AI versus AI in the fight over medical costs. And I have to tell you some guys, this post that I made with the reel just a few days ago got a lot of responses. People saying this is messed up. I remember talking to a particular dentist not too long ago, and him telling me that the system they have is to, put the claims in. And so they would submit the claims, not even using AI on their side at all, and they'd submit them and they get declined. So they would ask, and they said the system declined it. And so they'd come back and say, okay, what doctor declined it? Apparently, by law in New Jersey and a lot of other states, you have to have a doctor behind, let's say, the refusal, a documented doctor who practices. And so they went back to the insurance company, and the insurance company said, well, AI made the decision. Well, once AI just made the decision and there was no doctor enforcing it, guess what? All those 42 claims, they immediately got paid because, ladies and gentlemen, that was fraud. Okay? Absolute fraud. So I used the example of the two forks, and I was playing with the two forks kind of as a play there. But what I really said to people is it looks like we're a little forked up, okay, with the two AIs fighting each other. So I know a little comedy there, but I think it's serious that we have to make sure that AI is not spinning its wheels from protection to even bad guys. And I think that's a problem that we're starting to see. And ladies and gentlemen, we've been hearing a lot about ByteDance. Yes. ByteDance pauses the AI video launch. ByteDance has paused the launch of its AI video generator, Cdance 2.0, after copyright complaints from studios, including, that's right, guys, Disney. The dispute centers on claims that copyrighted characters were used in training the model. Engineers are now adding safeguards to prevent intellectual property violations. Well, why are they suddenly doing this now? Like, why wasn't this done in the beginning? I'm missing something here. So everybody says to me, and whether it's Disney or another studio, I mean, Disney always says, they're great and all that. Well, wonderful, right? But I tell you one thing, they will come after you. If, everybody says, oh, they're such a sweet company, they make great movies. Use their productions, and they will be after you. I know a school that was in a certain part of the United States, very far from where I am, and they were literally told the day before their performance that they had to shut down. Now, how do you think the school felt, the students felt, the teachers felt, the parents felt? They were not able to put the production on because they hadn't paid a license fee. That's crazy, guys. But it's ultimately the truth. Yeah, it is the truth. And I think the truth is something that hopefully people will realize that's what's going on and why things are happening. So I want you to understand that. And be mindful that when you do things, there are costs and there are licensing fees. And you have to make sure what you're doing is licensed. And if you take content and you don't have permission from the writers, the publishers, etc., producers, well, you could be getting yourself into a little bit of a sticky situation, especially in the legal territory there. All right, guys, Adobe. Yes, Adobe. We haven't talked about them in a very long time. Adobe finally settles the U.S. lawsuit. Adobe is going to pay $150 million to settle a U.S. government lawsuit accusing the company of hiding termination fees and making subscriptions hard to cancel. The deal includes a $75 million fine and $75 million in free services for customers. Adobe denies wrongdoing, but says it has improved the subscription and cancellation process. Yeah. The thing I don't get is you pay money for these services. I know one of my companies uses Adobe, but we are very strongly looking to get rid of them. But the problem is some of these other tools that are not subscription-based don't have a few key features. And if they could just add them, we be able to just pay what we pay for Adobe in 1 year and own all of the software and not have to pay for anything else subscription based because you don't really get support. It's really just I don't know, a really messed up situation if you ask me. And Mr. Kalanick launches a robotics startup recently. Yes, Travis Kalanick. Are you wondering who this guy is? Well, when I tell you the name of his company, you'll probably know him. Travis Kalanick, the co-founder of Uber, has launched a new robotics company called Atoms. The startup will supposedly build specialized robots for industries like food, mining, and transportation. The goal is to automate real-world tasks with machines designed for specific jobs. I guess if they're transportation or what a lot of these companies say, they're not in the transportation business, they're in the technology business for helping schedule rides. That's just so messed up. So I guess if their other company takes off and this other company start to tank, they have something else to bring them in revenue. Because I've talked to many of the drivers, and apparently the drivers don't really get much money. And I'm back on the TikTok again. There's some more news with TikTok. That's right, guys. A $10 billion fee tied to the TikTok deal that's supposedly coming up. The Donald Trump administration could receive about $10 billion in fees linked to the deal restructuring TikTok's U.S. operations. Now, the agreement shifts control from ByteDance to a majority American-owned venture aiming at securing U.S. user data. I know right now, guys, as we put our reels out on lots of social media, including TikTok, I had one the other day. I was putting something out about just what was in the video about how, medical institutions and insurance companies are fighting each other with AI. And you know what they did? They removed my title and said that title did not pass the review. Well, who are they to tell me that the title doesn't pass review? It's said in the video. So I'm wondering when this comes under U.S. control, are they going to stop playing games with us and saying, you know what, you're not doing anything wrong, we're going to let that title go? They're still a little bit controlling, if you ask me, and TikTok's not really freedom of speech. I use them. It's a necessary evil. Is it my most favorite platform? No. In fact, we used to be on TikTok with this particular channel, and we were told that we could not be on TikTok anymore. Apparently, our content did not align with their rules and obligations, which is a bunch of nonsense. So what I do on the show is I tell you the truth. I give you facts. I don't give you opinions most of the time, if you know. And let's just say they didn't like that. There were at least a dozen times that they had banned, not my account, but they had banned some of my posts because they claimed that they were inappropriate. Well, I went back for a review and found out that they were indeed appropriate. I think I told you guys just recently that Facebook had put suspensions on my account a couple times because their technology had made a mistake and they apologized for it. And suddenly they locked down my account so I couldn't even make any comments. And then a few weeks before that, I couldn't even get into the account because the account was suspended until I had to go through some nonsense process. What caused this? Basically, I logged into a different IP while I was traveling, and the wonderful, brilliant geniuses at Facebook thought I was basically a bad actor. I get the concept. So if you're concerned about that, Facebook, why don't you make me log in two-factor every time? Like, hello. Or if I'm doing something and you're wondering, let me two-factor it so you know it's legitimate, right? Also, I would love them to set the true limits on what you can and can't do. So there isn't this game. I know they do this, and LinkedIn also does the same thing. But the thing about LinkedIn when they do it is LinkedIn is not owned by Facebook. I don't know if you guys know who owns LinkedIn. It was sold several years ago to Microsoft. Now, nowhere on the site can you find Microsoft's name unless you dig about 5, 6, 7, or 8 pages deep that Microsoft owns LinkedIn. And again, you get the same terrible support you get if you call Microsoft. When you have an issue, they log things, they go back and forth. I had an issue where I had found out that one of the emails had been compromised. I changed it, everything was fine, but it took a while for the system to stop sending me junk. And so I think a lot of people that use these platforms, and LinkedIn is more of a professional platform, as you guys know. It's not more of the social kids platform. I think the biggest issue is that these platforms have a lot of these rules, like dictatorship, and they claim that they're for the greater good of all concerned. I get that, and I'm all for these things. But when your rules are based on opinions, like when I posted a title about, AI forking, AI basically, I think I said something like, AI, medical institutions are using AI to fight insurance companies. So AI fighting AI. And they took that down saying, not the post, just the title. So they're getting a little too controlling. After all, it is China. When the product is in the United States, I'm hoping they will be more understanding. If the content's already in the video, why would you block my title? Like, that's just like below the belt. I don't know. I have a big problem with that. So apparently, this deal with TikTok, and everybody keeps asking me, John, when? And this is a good question. When is the TikTok deal going to go through? I think that's the billion-dollar question, right? Based on the reports from late October 2025, the TikTok deal was set to be finalized, as we know, in October, right? But it didn't happen. So the question is when? Now there's going to be fees and stuff hitting in. They agreed to the deals we know in January, but we're still playing games. And I think it's coming down to a lot of money and negotiations that are really keeping the transfer from happening. But here's the funny thing. Even though the company is going to transfer, China still owns 20% of the company. Now, I'm okay with that as long as that doesn't mean they're putting their fingers in and telling me what I can't put as titles. I think that's really bad, guys, just being quite honest. And ladies and gentlemen, yes, Europe targets AI abuse of images. The European Union is moving to ban AI systems that generate basically content for minors, children, that has adult-related content in it or images. And regulators are proposing updates to the AI Act as concerns grow over deepfakes produced by tools like xAI's Grok. The proposal still requires approval from the European Parliament before becoming law, but hopefully, this will be something that steers us in the right direction. And I'm also hoping that the United States follows suit with making sure they enforce that. Yeah, that's a very weird thing, if you ask me. But the fact that the European Union is getting involved really is good. I mean, they're really ahead of things. I have to tell you that. And chip makers, ladies and gentlemen, turns to robots. Yep. STM Microelectronics plans to deploy humanoid robots in older chip factories while restraining their original plan and retraining workers for higher skilled roles. The company says automation could boost productivity and help keep European facilities open instead of shutting them down. I don't know. Are they really doing what they say they're doing, or are they just doing this for the people to help it get to a certain level? And what I mean by a certain level is, are they lying to the people so they can help them grow it and then fire them? I wouldn't put that past them, to be quite honest. And a social media addiction trial begins. This is amazing. A landmark lawsuit is testing whether platforms like Meta and Google can be held responsible for the mental well-being and health when it harms young users. The case centers around a girl who reportedly spent up to 16 hours a day on Instagram, raising major legal questions. Are social media platforms simply tools, or are they intentionally designed to be addictive? Now, if you ask any marketer, advertising company, they design commercials and ads and campaigns to get people emotionally addicted. And when they do, they think with their emotions and not logically. And science has shown that when you affect somebody's emotions, okay, there's a very high probability that you're going to get them to do something than by just hitting them with facts. So I'll have to see what's going to happen with that, but I will definitely keep you on track. And Europe does it again. Europe raises the age ratings for loot box games. Europe's video game rating system will soon require games with loot boxes to receive a PGI 16 rating by default. Regulators say the paid random item systems blur the line between gaming and gambling. And parents should be warned about this. The change could impact popular titles that rely on microtransactions and mystery rewards. I think a lot of times when we hear about these rewards and younger people hear about the rewards, they feel, oh, this is really cool, right? But in actuality, it's not. It's a very, very big problem. And so, the whole concept of the rewards, but people still ask you, John, loot box and, what's going to happen. I think the biggest thing is that loot box is not new, okay? And the New York Attorney General versus the Valve in February of 2026, which was the NYAG, the New York General versus Valve, alleging its loot boxes are, and I quote, quincentennial gambling that allows users, including children, to gamble on virtual items. The lawsuit alleges players spend money on keys to open containers for items worth far less, enabling a massive gambling network. So you're gambling these boxes from stuff you paid, so it is kind of money in a sense. The Valve's defense is Valve defended system arguing just recently that loot boxes are similar to legally accepted items like baseball card packs or blind bag toys rather than illegal gambling. The class action lawsuit brought under play in March of 2026, just recently, was filed in Washington state, alleging that Valve's system uses casino-style mechanics to exploit gamers, including children, for profit. Potential impact, reports suggest Valve is altering its skin collection systems in Counter-Strike 2 away from traditional cases towards terminal systems, potentially in response to this scrutiny. Previous settlements, earlier legal challenges saw settlements for Epic Games, Rocket League, and Fortnite players in Canada. So that was back in 2021. The crackdown by the NYAG is notable for continuing the legal trend of defining digital randomized purchases as potentially falling under state gambling laws, particularly when high-value items can be sold on third-party marketplaces. And I think that's the whole thing that's interesting. It's not like you're just buying something and you're moving forward. You're buying something, you could trade it, you could lose it, and that is what gambling is. So I think the most important thing I want to go back to is quincentennial. And so I'm going to go to Webster on this and get a meaning on what quincentennial means. So we'll do that right now by Merriam-Webster. And so according to Merriam-Webster, quincentennial is an adjective meaning perfectly typical, representative, or the purest example of a specific person or thing. It describes the essential, most fundamental nature of something, often used to denote an ideal classic example, such as the quincentennial New Yorker. Perfectly typical being the quincentennial of something. And quiescent tense, the most essential part or perfect example, derived from the medieval Latin quinta essentia, meaning the fifth essence. So typical classic quincentennial prototypical essential ultimates. For many of us, the hot dog is the quincentennial summer food. So what does it mean? Kind of like the standard. The quincentennial for going swimming is a bathing suit. The new quincentennial in the last few years is wearing a bathing suit that is at least Bermuda short length. Another quincentennial might be the quincentennial of studying is books, is computers, is thinking, is exams, is tests, is knowledge, is college, is high school. Hopefully that gave you an understanding of what quincentennial means. So we will definitely keep the eye on that and what's going on with the loot box games. Leisure banking app recently glitches. Yep, it exposes customer transactions. A technical glitch briefly allowed customers of Lloyd's banking group, and they replied by, whoops, I guess, apps including Halifax and Bank of Scotland to see other users' transactions. This is more than just a blip. The bank says the issue, quote unquote, was quickly fixed and no accounts were accessed. But regulators are now reviewing the incident after customers reported seeing large payments and sensitive details. So they lied directly to their customers, because if they would have stayed up front, they might have been liable. Now they might be liable for even more because they've lied. Household batteries are triggering waste facility fires. I know this seems funny, but it's not funny. It is truthful. Improperly discarding household batteries are becoming a major cause of fires at recycling and waste facilities. Experts are warning that lithium-ion batteries from items like vapes, toys, and small electronics can spark or ignite when crushed during waste processing. Authorities are urging people to use designated battery recycling points instead of throwing them in regular trash. Yeah, so make sure you dispose of all your electronics properly. I think that's the moral there. And let's talk a little bit about the travel. I'll call it travel nightmare was the hashtag I gave it, with the airports and TSA. And so the Department of Homeland Security basically continues to hurt airport travel. I don't know if you guys know this, but frustrated flyers are hit with hours-long waits at New York City, EWR. I was fortunate to have Clear, but the line for Clear was basically an hour. And once I got through, there were only two people, two guards on that were able to basically check your ID. So basically, what does it come down to? 34 days into the Democrat shutdown. Americans are still facing hour-long waits at the airports across the country. Officers have gone without pay for the third time in nearly 6 months, TSA said in the statement. And also, they didn't show up to work or call in sick because apparently they missed their paycheck this Saturday. And many TSA officers cannot pay their rent, buy food, or afford to put gas in their car, forcing them to call out sick from work. Democrats must reopen the Department of Homeland Security soon. On a recent Friday today, work colleagues, not naming them, for a 2 p.m. departure. They got there basically at 9:50 in the morning for a 2 p.m. departure to get home to Memphis after a Big Apple business trip. A Manhattan woman, who I'm not going to name her name, but I want to just give you the story of what happened to her. She was not very happy, in case you guys are wondering. Yeah, she was not very happy. And she headed to Spain from John F. Kennedy Airport in Queens this past Thursday. And she was told her flight basically to be there 4.5 hours early, or up to 2 hours earlier than usual. Asked if she had a message for the government. She replied, "Yeah, you can tell them they can come after me." Okay, so I mean, obviously, I think people are getting upset, and it's crazy, right? What's going on? Why this is going on? I gotta tell you, I'm ashamed at our government. I really am. But I have a bigger concern without getting into the real details because I don't want to educate people on what's happening. I'm concerned with our level of safety and security. Again, I'm not going to tell you what happened because I think that would be out of school and I don't want to educate the bad actors. But my point is, certain procedures were getting lax. So lax that when I asked the question, I said, "We're sorry, we can't do that. You're just going to have to do it this way. There's nothing else we can do. We don't have the staff." When there was one gentleman there and I told him something, he says, "It's not up to me. You have to talk to that lady. She's the sole decision maker." I talked to her and she said, "It's fine." He says, "If she said it's fine, it's okay with me." And I was just like, what the heck is going on? This is a department we were lied to, guys. We were told that even through the shutdown, we would never be affected and our safety would never be affected. We were told that, right? And I like to believe that. But what I saw the other day in traveling and how they handle things, it was an abomination. It was a romper room checkpoint, the best way to explain it to you. So when will DHS reopen again? Guys, I don't have the answer. Okay. March 20th, the Department of Homeland Security shutdown is in its 6th week with no definitive reopening date. The Senate failed for a 5th time to pass a funding bill, prolonging the impasse over immigration enforcement. And this is for many, many sources. The shutdown has lasted over 35 days, with Senate failing to reach a 60-vote threshold. Impacted services are the funding lapse impacting TSA, FEMA, and cybersecurity staff, with about 50,000 TSA agents working without pay, leading to increased staff sick calls and longer security lines nationwide. And so, while negotiations continue, Democrats are demanding right now immigration reform, while Republicans are pushing to end the shutdown, as reported by many stations. I said what really needs to be done, but it's not going to happen. I think what has to happen is all the people who are in the government, which is, your assembly, your Congress, the people who are voting, we need to stop their pay. And once we can get the pay returned to the people, then we can reinstate their pay. And you'll see how quickly that they decide. I said, well, let's wait till they go to fly. So he said to me, "John, it doesn't matter." I said, "Why?" "Well, because they have their own private jets from the government, and they're never going to have to deal with this." And I said, that's pretty sad, the way that they're doing that. I think that's just a terrible thing. But if you were in the airport like I was the other day and hearing stories, and I want to tell you, with getting to the airport early in the morning, like I always do, and I allow plenty of time, I got through Clear, and they had a lot of staff there for Clear, trying to keep people calm and letting people know there was nothing they could do. And then going down to the floor, we had to go from the second floor to the first floor, and then having literally almost 5 minutes to make my flight. I literally almost missed my flight. I called United and I asked them, "What do I do?" They said, "Oh, there's nothing we can do." Like, they were not helpful. They were just useless. I mean, if this is happening, right? I mean, I think something should be done to make sure that people don't miss their flights. I know you're probably saying they should get there earlier. I get that, really. I get that. Maybe they have to make people check in at the airport. Maybe people have to get there so many hours before. Maybe they have to do that. I mean, I don't know. But all I know, guys, is that was just an abomination the other day, how people moved in and around and how it basically, guys, it did absolutely, when I say nothing, it did absolutely nothing. It was the most romper rooming TSA checkpoint I've ever seen in my life. And I've seen some pretty bad checkpoints. I was through one airport down, I believe it was in the south. And the airport was a very small airport. They literally had 2 gates. They didn't even have really a TSA checkpoint. They built one when you came in. And then once everybody was in, they took it out and they closed the door. And so basically you had to stay in that room, and there was no way of basically getting checkpoint again. And they wouldn't checkpoint again until what? The next flights were coming in. So I get that this is all about politics. I get it. But my question to everyone else is, when will the government shutdown end? When do you think it will end? They claim it's a partial shutdown. It's a mess. And Congress and the president have, as I said, failed to pass or continue funding for all 12 appropriation bills for the fiscal year of 2026. A partial shutdown was active as of mid-March, forcing DHS employees, including TSA and the Coast Guard personnel, to work without pay. Affected areas, the shutdown specifically impacts the DHS functions like TSA, FEMA, and border control, while other departments have been funded through previous legislation. The shutdown continues until a budget deal is negotiated requiring bipartisan agreement to pass the Senate. I have to tell you, this is the first time in history that I think our government has just been a crock. I've never really liked the government, but I think now this is such a monkey game. It's not even funny. And the current partial government shutdown began on February 14th. Okay. 35 days. That's appalling, guys. And remember, the legislative hurdle is the funding bill requires 60 votes to pass the Senate. They've come close, but they've not done enough. And this is something that I think a lot of people don't realize, that we need to be not about, let's say, what we want to, but we have to look at what's greater good for everyone. And when I say politics, I get what politics are about. I had family members that were in politics, but I think they're doing their country and the people that voted for them a disservice. And my feeling is all these people, what do we have to do? Wait, and maybe, hopefully, nobody will vote for them and they won't get in again. It's sad when we think about how this is impacting the entire country. We're not talking about one city. Did I also mention another challenge? Many small airports are soon going to close. You heard me. They may soon close. And that's another big fiasco. Where do you put these people? What do you do with these people? How do you handle it? Knowing that people show up to work every day at Capitol Hill, and their priority is not getting our bill passed. Like I said, none of those people in Congress, right, or Senate have to go through the airport because they have their own private plane. Could we be in a shutdown for the rest of the month? I think so. Could we be here till the end of the next month? Probably. How about the end of summer? Maybe. Who knows? Will we be over by the end of the year? I wouldn't put it past it. it's like this is not an urgency for people to handle. And I think the fact that it's not an urgency tells me that this is not something that's going to get done tomorrow. So when we think about, our tax dollars, we think about funding. We have to ask ourselves one question. When we're making that vote, okay, are we making that vote because of some bias that we have, or are we truly making that vote for the greater good of all concerned? I think that's the big challenge. So we covered a lot of interesting stories this week. And I think those of you that are, out there tonight and, wondering, where is AI going? AI is morphing, in case you didn't know. It's morphing into a lot of different disciplines. AI, unfortunately, is starting to cause some challenges because we're getting offense and defense using it against each other. And you know what this reminds me? This reminds me of the Whopper. You remember the movie The Whopper? It was World Operations Plan Response with the movie War Games. And I still remember how the one kid in the movie and his girlfriend, how they got this movie, how they got into play a game, or he did at this one of these local companies. And he thought it was just about playing a game. But then he realized this was not just a gaming company. He got in somewhere he should not have been. But when he later met Stephen Falking, who was the designer of the Whopper, codenamed Joshua, he was doing research in the library because he knew a lot of times that programmers sometimes put a back door in the program. You're never going to get in the front door, but you can get in through the back door. And that was an interesting thing. So he found out the name Joshua. He did some research on it, and he put that in, and then the computer responded back and saying, I thought you were dead. He's like, sometimes people sometimes make mistakes. Yes, they do. And the thing is, he really wasn't dead. He was hiding his identity. And it was funny when they went out to go see him, how he hadn't really, he hadn't really made the decision to go help, but something changed. Something changed. And that change was when the computer had to do basically playing itself. And when the computer plays itself, it's like AI playing itself. That's kind of what it's like. And you're trying to take knowledge and have it fight itself. And eventually, one side, they're both equal. Then they came up with a very interesting thing, which is when they played the game tic-tac-toe. You probably played tic-tac-toe many times. If you play it, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. If you put the piece in the center, you have a higher probability of winning because there's less possibility for people to score, get 3 in a row. Well, when he played that game, he realized something. He realized that push and pull. What he realized in that movie is what's going on right now with the AI in many industries. Now, we're talking about it in the healthcare industry with patients, the hospitals, and the insurance companies. We're talking about that. But it's not just there, guys. It could be in any industry. We were talking about this a few weeks ago, saying that I think it was the travel industry, that they were going to use AI to potentially inflate the ticket prices. AI, ladies and gentlemen, is a tool, and we have to use it for the greater good of all concerned. If we don't, not only is it going to harm us, but it's going to harm other people. Many people I talk to say, oh, gee, AI is going to make me lots of money. I'm happy for you. But is that money that it's going to make you, is it going to harm other people in the process? I'm not talking about being competitive, where, you may have an edge in your company. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, are you doing something that is going to directly, negatively, let's say, sabotage? Because even competition is not sabotaging, right? Sabotaging is make it so the other company can't even exist. And AI is bringing resources to the table. But what we're finding in AI is that many things, whether we're talking about Amazon, Echo, Google Voice, Siri, etc., it's not them we're worried about. It's the third parties that they're linking in that we're concerned about. What are they actually doing with your data? I mean, I think that's the question for today is, what are these companies doing with your data? And if they're doing something with it, you have a right to know what's going on and what could happen to you because of that data being exploited. I think that's a very important thing to recognize, to understand, and to realize, because if you understand that your data could be compromised, then you're going to act in a different fashion, a different mode. You're going to be a little more protective. And I think that's the message I'm bringing here tonight, is that AI does have a lot of potential. But when we know that by having bigger speeds, which we learned from on the internet, it opens Pandora's box faster, right? So the bigger your pipe is, the faster your internet goes, right? But the faster your internet goes also means there's a higher probability that something could come in to harm your system, especially if you're not protected. And I've always said, it's not a question of if you're going to get attacked, but when, if you're not properly protected. So you need to make sure you're doing audits. You make sure your systems are always up to date. The world of cybersecurity and safety, and even security of systems physically, like alarm systems and stuff like that, it's changing, guys. It's changing to price. But I think when we, as a country, use technology that's made in the United States, and we know that it's made, or Canada, we know that it's made with the governance, things ethical, as opposed to things that are cheap and potentially might, well, let's say, compromise data, because they're all about, let's say, data and money. That's a problem. And I think this is why a lot of people don't like to buy foreign product. It's not that it's just made in another country. It's what's their agenda? Why are they doing this? And what do they have to gain? And I think that's really the question at the end of the day. If TikTok were to close up tomorrow, okay, assuming they were going to be no more, because basically the U.S. is going to buy them out, assuming they're going to be no more, would that affect me that much? No. I've gotten some great videos on there that have done well, but I have other platforms. And I've said this to you guys before. If you put something on social media, you have to realize you do not own the social media unless it is your owned real estate in technology. You don't own Facebook. You don't own Instagram. You don't own X. You don't own TikTok. You don't own any of them. And I think the quicker we realize that we don't own them, we have to understand that we can't put all our eggs in that one basket. Because if that system suddenly gets shut down or they ban you, whatever reason, you can't have all your eggs in one basket. You really just can't. So somebody would have asked me today, John, where's the future of AI going? By the way, there's a book coming out next year about AI. The future of AI right now is a trajectory that I believe keeps moving. It's a target that moves every day. Sometimes we take 2 steps left, we take 2 steps right, and we kind of move back and forth. Sometimes we even go backwards a little bit, and then we go forward. The question really comes down to governance. It comes down to standards. It comes down to ethics. I've said to you guys before, just because we can doesn't mean we should. So if we do something and we can, it doesn't mean we should do it, even though we can do it. So I'm going to ask you to say the question, just because we can doesn't mean we should. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. Why are you saying that? There could be consequences for us, for others, but they might not be immediately apparent. Or, let's say, immediately inclusive. Because we're looking at the surface. We're not looking at the whole picture, the whole forest, the whole world. We're looking at just us in that ecosystem. We're not looking at how it affects everybody. Take Bitcoin for a minute, right? Bitcoin seems interesting. What happens if somebody loses their wallet passkey? It's a very long key. They call it a passphrase. You lose access to your wallet. And there's no way to get back into the wallet. I see that, guys, as a major, major, major problem. So there are challenges out there. Artificial intelligence, we learned about learning, and we talked about the fact that AI right now and companies having lawsuits because, like we learned with Disney, they are potentially stealing training data. Did they know their data was being used for training? Maybe not, maybe. But a big company that is using large amounts of data, I think it's in their best interest to make sure that they have rights to the data. I mean, that's just common sense. So as we keep moving through the world and we keep evolving with new AI concepts and emerging them into different industries in different ways, the question still comes up, is how is this going to make the world a better place for myself and for those around me? That's the question. If you go back to the days when refrigerators were made, back when my grandparents were alive, refrigerators could last 40, 50 years. Today, a fridge might last 5, 10 years, maybe. So everything has changed. That whole ecosystem has changed with even the fact they build something, it's designed to break sooner, right? That's just kind of how it's working. More of a disposable product. I'm not really fond of it. But their argument is that they make things cheaper now. And when you pay a little bit more, you do get things for a better price, but they don't last very long. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm John C. Morley, serial entrepreneur. Be sure to check out BelieveMeAchieve.com, of course, for more of my amazing, inspiring creations. And I'll catch you real soon. Remember, guys, use AI smartly. It's a tool. How we use it makes it good or bad. Take care, everyone, and be well.